the Christian doctrine. So it seems as though Christianity is the power in the world, but it's not. The power in the world is from the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. And there's 1,000 ways to prove that. I'm not going to go through that right now because your programming is just an hour of power, right? We're not going to do
part two.
Oh man, listen, this is a detail that might sound minute, but it's really important. And that is that if the majority of people are under a particular sway or influence, then it's going to appear as though whatever they're following is the stronger message. That's not true. There was a time when all of Europe was in the Dark Ages. Does that mean that the Dark Ages is the way to go? No, because all of the people are there. The Quran is a book that tells us that God is not a numbers man. He's not a man he's not the number runner. So he's not there saying, okay, whoever ends up with the most followers, whoever ends up, no, the Quran clearly tells you that the majority of people themselves are going to hell. And they're creating that hell for themselves. It's not even God punishing them. They're self-punishing. So that's the majority of people who are like that. It says they are like cattle. This is God talking in the Quran. He said, in fact, they're worse than cattle because cattle will respond to warnings. You say, hey, don't go over there. Right? The sheep will turn around and look. The cow, something's going on here. But the human being, when there's danger, he will pick his 3-year-old up and run, not away, towards the danger. Because something interesting is happening in his human brain with the freedom that God gave that brain and his curiosity factor and his interest and how he's being taught to just look for sensational things. So if there are people who consider what Minister Farrakhan does say as being very sensational, very emotionally tight and laden, and wow, I didn't think of that when he said it like, that's good. Let them do that. Let them go for that. But don't make the mistake of thinking that W.D. Muhammad was not the greater influence in the world. Imam Muhammad and what he left as language continues to be the greater, and in fact, most of what Minister Farrakhan has done in interfaith work was begun by W.D. Muhammad. There was no interfaith in the Nation of Islam as such. So what he's doing and saying, and he's pulling pages out of W.D. Muhammad's book in order to do it. And that's fine, that's what it's for. But again, let's not make the mistake of thinking that the greater influence in terms of what has been moving and shaping and evolving human thinking in the world, in America especially, and in the world, has not been the language of W.D. Muhammad. And we don't mean that as a personality. That's why I don't even like to just mention his name and just, W.D. Muhammad flags, we got them for sale. No. What we're talking about is what God does to influence change through language and concepts, especially concepts pertaining to what a human being actually is. There was a time when we were believing that the human being, that the only qualified human on earth was the black man. That was Nation of Islam doctrine. You can't debate that. They said, we're the best, and the yellow man, red man, brown man, they're not really totally human. That's a neo-Nazi. Right or wrong?
Yes, right.
I mean, we got to call it like we hear it, right?
Yes.
Black man, original, the only one who's God on earth. Everybody else, substrata human. That's what W.D. Muhammad had to deal with when he got here. So don't resurrect that. If you want to resurrect the social and economic program, fine. But don't try to go into the theology of Elijah Muhammad, because you don't qualify for that. Right. The only one who qualified for that upon the passing of Elijah Muhammad from this earth is his son Wallace D. Muhammad, singularly. So that's the message.
One comment.
Yeah, and then we have also another person who would like to make a contribution behind you. You can't see him gesturing.
Let me make one comment on that.
Yeah, okay.
And then.
We'll actually, just for the sake of time, we're going to wait because we did want to entertain any questions that the audience may have had, and he's only got an hour of power, and we don't want the power to dwindle. Whatever, I'm going to let him control the time from here. You're already, you're in the shot and so forth, but this is the producer and the regulator of what we're doing.
Just one quick comment on that. What I wanted to share was that is also by design. For an example, because of the effectiveness of Imam Muhammad's message, he did not get the public notoriety. Okay, they did not publicize his message, and I'm going to draw a parallel. Just like right now, if you look at the what's going on in the broader Muslim world with the all of the craziness, right? Well, we know the solution to that is the true message of Islam. Well, they intentionally don't broadcast. President Obama intentionally would not use Muslim terrorists because it's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a Muslim terrorist. They don't go
peaceful
together.
terrorists.
Right? Yeah, they don't go together. So they rather, push and project this image so that the confusion can be there. When the clarity of the message of Imam Muhammad, given the proper, given that exposure, that creates a different climate and a whole different, atmosphere. And I think they didn't think, that was in their interest, their political nor economic interest to allow that message to be mainstream.
So you think that if he was given the media attention that Minister Farrakhan was given, he could have been equally, if not more, as effective in resurrecting the mind, body, and soul of our people?
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely.
All right, one last question. We're going to get to questions. I just want to finish up that a lot of my viewing audience asked was, they talk about the structure of the nation. Of course, you have Minister Farrakhan, and and under him is Minister Ishmael. If something was happening to Minister Farrakhan, he's the national representative, and you had before him Minister Khalid, and then of course, Malcolm used to be the national representative. So a lot of people ask, well, now that W.D. Muhammad isn't here, who is in charge? And I didn't know how to answer that, so that's why I got you brothers here. So who's in charge?
That's easy.
Like who's
That's
the
easy. Your camera probably can't see it, but there are books back here called the Quran.
Okay.
And God in the Quran calls the Quran an Imam. The Quran is an Imam. It's a leader. Right? So if you've trained people sufficiently to respond to leadership, then leadership can come from the study of a tree in your backyard.
That's right.
You can get a message. Allah calls them all instructing signs, ayat, everything that the sun. You can. So it doesn't take a human being, especially if the human being is incorrect, to become your next leader. It's not because I'm the son of this one that I become the leader, or because I've spent all of these years in this position. Does the vice president always become the president in America if something happens to the president? No, you go to the Speaker of the House, right? He's the vice president. He's called vice for a reason, because he's taking care of a lot of the dirty work.
Yes.
Right? So it doesn't mean that that strata is what we call fitrah, or nature-based. It's not how nature does things. Nature prepares life forms for certain kinds of conditions and certain kinds of challenges. We, as a group under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, were prepared for his passing by giving us instruction in who would be the suitable person to go to for information and clarity upon the death of Elijah Muhammad. Not to worship his flesh as Wallace D. Muhammad, but to investigate his logic. And if his logic didn't hold up, then don't mess with him. If Ishmael's logic doesn't hold up and advance the nation of Islam after Minister Farrakhan is gone, if that's the way it goes, because Ishmael can go before Minister Farrakhan. That's fitrah. Farrakhan might live another 20 years. And all the people under him might be dead in 5, 10 years. We don't know. I'm not wishing that. But we don't know when people say, but that happens. You can die before your parent, right? Right. So it's not locked in like that. W.D. Muhammad just happened to be gifted by God with a sincere heart.
Yes.
And it was the sincere heart that he put in front of the activated brain to keep the brain on task. Now, if your brain is very activated, but your heart has got some flaws, then that's not good leadership. And the result of it is going to be seen almost immediately.
Yes.
So people have to learn how to evaluate and re-evaluate leadership. I don't need a physical man, national spokesperson for anything. I didn't have one before I was a member in the nation or in the Imam Muhammad's community. It was my mother and father. And I didn't agree with everything they said and did, right? And in the life of my children, I'm that leader, but I'm not the only one they listen to. Sometimes they listen to other speakers and leaders and teachers in school before they listen to my advice. I don't have an issue with that, because if I set them on the proper road of investigation, they'll be able to make the same wise choices that I made in following a W.D. Muhammad or Minister Louis Farrakhan or any other figure. But the figure doesn't have to be there if you have qualified yourself as one who can identify guidance. That's all we're saying. So we don't need a flesh and blood leader in front of us. If we get one that's that dynamic, we'll promote him. Maybe we'll run him for president of, maybe not the United States, but, you know, of something, in the organization somewhere. But we don't need it, is the point. We might want it, but we don't necessarily need it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's the way Imam W.D. Muhammad wanted it?
Absolutely.
That's the way
He had
wanted
33
everyone
years to say, after I'm gone, follow this guy or this woman.
Mm-hmm.
He said the next leader might be a woman. But when he says leader, he's not talking about, you know what else he said? And this will shut the whole case on it. He said, I, meaning himself, represents the end of messianic leadership among African American people. Mm-hmm. Now, who has not been a messianic leader in African? All of our leaders practically have been seen as Messiah types by our people.
That's right.
Right? So he said he understood that Elijah Muhammad was a Messiah type. He understood that the mythos that was created around his own life was also a Messiah. We saw him as like a Messiah, like everything he said was gospel.
Yes.
A lot of us still see him like that. If Imam Muhammad said it, it's true. What if he said something different 10 years after that? Which one is true and which one? He was a human being is the point, right? So he said, I represent the end of that. So whatever happens in terms of leadership, male, female, a child, he said, could come up and be the leader of this community if they qualify. 12 years old, he said, if he qualifies and he shows mental development and spiritual discipline, he said, put him up and let him lead the prayer. Because he's ready for leadership. It's not the body and it's not the amount of time you spent on earth that qualifies you for leadership. So that's maturity. That's where we are as a development.
Okay. We're definitely going to have to do a part 2. It is my brain is hurting. Thank y'all so much. We have about maybe 8 or 9 more minutes. We do have an audience here. I just ask that you, kind of, I know it's real deep.
No lectures.
Yeah, just kind of keep
Quick
your
questions.
question or comment short, because we're right at the, but I want to open it up to anyone who want to make a question or comment.
I just
Yes,
want
sir.
to make,
Introduce yourself, sir.
I'm Brother Earl, known as Brother Earl. I came in the Nation of Islam in 1958. I served with Malcolm, Farrakhan, Joseph. Matter of fact, my position was Lieutenant, Brother Earl, out of Rochester, New York. But one of the things I'd like to draw attention to is Brother Benjamin Bilal, Nunetic book, Seeds of Everything. All life began with seed.
Indeed.
All life. And the conversation we're thinking about the steel shop and the running shop, water run on the road, everything is on the road. Imam Wali Muhammad, he cultivated the landscape so the seed will have an opportunity not only to grow, but reproduce. It's already set into motion. And I would advise people to get Nunetic book. If they value their future, if they value their children, Nunetic is the answer. for their investment.
And just for clarity's sake, for people who might not understand what he's referring to my new book called Nunetics, and that's a word that I coined called Nunetics. It's from the Arabic letter Nun, which means seed. That's one of the meanings of the letter Nun. And every letter in the Arabic letter system has its own unique meaning. That's what we have not been told as Muslims around the world. Most of us are learning Arabic based on a root system, a three-letter root system. But I ask you, in the fitrah, in God's natural world, do roots come before seeds?
No, sir.
No, you have to plant the seed and the seed develops the roots. In the seed is the idea, right? So when you understand Arabic and reading the Quran, by understanding the seed letter, is going to give you many, many more levels of understanding than what your average Arabic English dictionary is giving you. So that's my 2-minute plug for Nunetics. And again, I'm sure the information will be on the screen or on the website of our brother Sharif pertaining to how you can purchase your copy.
And
Sharif is the must read. Also, Wali book. Words.
Yeah, we covered that one.
Right.
Yeah,
Make people-
yeah,
so
liberating
they-
words.
Those are must. He's some of the early Islamic scholars.
Thank you.
anyone else with any comments or questions? Okay, so we're definitely gonna have to do a part 2 of this thought-provoking conversation. I hope for those who are listening, it cleared up some misconceptions, not all of them, because it's so much history. I mean, we can go on for hours, days, weeks, months, maybe even years, but I just hope this clears up some misconceptions, gives people more clarity on this rich history, and I hope just, this channel isn't necessarily a religious channel, because I don't want it to just reach Muslims. I want it to reach as many people, but spirituality is tied in to it. That's why I have touched on so many different people.
True humans.
Yes.
Anywhere
War
they
Science
are.
Temple, Islam, Nation of Islam.
Humans.
I've talked.
Humans with the labels, that's all they are.
Right,
I've,
right.
And they're more similar than dissimilar. The labels are dividing us. So, I mean, if you're in a conscious community, does that make you not a Muslim? Is a Muslim a member of a conscious community? If I'm a Muslim, does it mean that I can't think like a Christian in terms of goodness? If I do something good for a Jew, does it mean God won't count it because I gave it to a Jew? No, we're talking about elevating the level of human consciousness to the point where we are to be identified internally, as in essence, the true human essence that God created in all of us. We're all the same. Take the clothes off, line us up and tell me who's a Muslim. Don't put the kufi on, don't put the kima on. Don't put the whatever the Jews wear, the little kippah or whatever. Don't put that on.
Right.
And just line them up. You're going to have the long beard people that you might think is a Muslim. He's going to be an Orthodox Jew, or So it doesn't matter what this flesh thing is dressed up as. It's the internal thing that we're addressing, and that was the key note of Imam Muhammad's leadership and many other people. It's even the keynote of Minister Farrakhan if you look behind the veneer of the race thing and the other things. And, if you look at the essential quality in what he's saying, he is also one who is doing his best. He just doesn't have the best method. That's my opinion. He doesn't have the best method for directing us language-wise to the goal that we need to get to. But as he breathes and wakes up in the morning, he's got chances and chances. God gives us all chances to reform and I don't want to use the word reform, but to elevate and illuminate continually until we close our eyes. So just be aware that there's a day when all of us are going to have to close our eyes. I just want to say this as a last 60-second thing. This audience here, beautiful people, but the ones that I'm directing what I'm saying to are the 2 children here. See? And he's been paying attention that most adults don't pay to this kind of talk.
Absolutely.
There's a reason for that.
That's right.
Because there's something, this is Nunetics. That, listen, as I speak, I'm talking letters and concepts that even his young brain is beginning to form new synapses around. He won't be the same, and believe it or not, even the one who's sleeping is going into his subconscious. And they're going to wake up one day soon, and you're going to realize these are not the same children, because they're being introduced to new patterns, new frequencies, new ways of thinking and calculating information. He might not get as caught up in the foolishness